Imagine your brain is a librarian standing at the entrance of a massive library, and every single day, hundreds of new words try to walk through the door. Most of them get turned away within hours. A few get a temporary visitor's pass, lasting a few days at most, and only a small number ever get a permanent membership card, allowed to stay in that library forever, ready whenever you need them. You've probably felt the frustration of this filtering system without ever understanding exactly how it worked. You study 15 new words on Monday. By Friday, maybe 2 of them are still there. The other 13 simply vanished, as if they were never there at all. Today, I want to show you exactly how your brain's librarian decides who gets to stay and who gets turned away at the door. Because once you understand the actual rules this filter uses, you can start working with it instead of constantly fighting against it. My name is Emma, and this is Train Your English Brain. I want to tell you about a student named Omar because his frustration with this exact problem led us to a discovery that changed how he studied completely. Omar kept a meticulous vocabulary notebook. Every single day, he added 10 new words, carefully translated, neatly organized by category. After several months, his notebook contained over 600 words. One afternoon, just to test himself honestly, he covered the translations and tried to recall the meaning of words from his own notebook, ones he had written down himself. He managed to correctly remember around 40 words out of 600. He told me, almost in disbelief, "Emma, I wrote every one of these myself. How is it possible that I don't actually know them?" The answer lay in exactly how his brain's filtering system had evaluated each word as it arrived, and almost none of them had passed the test required for permanent storage. Here is what your brain's filter is actually checking for, and it has very little to do with how many times you've seen a word. The first thing your brain checks is repetition across separated time, not repetition within a single sitting. Seeing a word 10 times in one study session feels productive, but your brain interprets this very differently than seeing that same word 10 times spread across 10 different days. Repetition within one sitting registers as one single event, regardless of how many times you technically saw the word inside it. Repetitions spread across days and weeks signals something far more important to your brain, that this information keeps reappearing in your life and therefore is worth permanently storing. This explains a huge part of what happened to Omar. He studied 10 new words every single day, but almost never circled back to review words from previous days. Each word entered as a single isolated event, then was immediately replaced by 10 brand new single isolated events the very next day. His brain's filter, quite reasonably, interpreted almost everything as a one-time occurrence, not worth permanent storage. The second thing your brain's filter checks for, and this one surprises most learners, is genuine use, not passive exposure. Simply seeing a word, even multiple times across multiple days, is treated very differently than actually using that word in a sentence you constructed yourself, in a conversation, in writing, in some form of active production. This is because using a word requires your brain to actively retrieve it, which is a fundamentally different, more demanding cognitive process than simply recognizing it when you see it. Your brain's filter seems to weigh this retrieval effort heavily when deciding what's worth keeping permanently. Words you've only ever passively read or heard, never actively retrieved and used yourself, remain much more fragile in memory, regardless of how many times you've technically encountered them. Omar's 600 words had almost entirely been passively written down and reviewed, never actively used in his own original sentences, conversations, or writing. They had exposure, but almost no genuine retrieval practice, and his brain's filter responded accordingly, discarding the vast majority of them within days. The third thing your brain's filter checks for, and this one surprises most learners, is emotional or personal relevance. Words connected to something meaningful, a real situation in your life, a strong feeling, a memorable story, get prioritized far more heavily than words that exist only as abstract definitions on a list. This connects directly to something we discussed in an earlier episode about emotional memory, but it applies here too. Your brain's filter isn't simply asking, has this word appeared enough times? It's also asking, does this word matter to this person's actual life, or is it just floating information with no real connection to anything they care about? Words that pass this second question get prioritized for storage, even with relatively less repetition. Words that fail it often get discarded even after surprisingly frequent exposure. So, knowing exactly what your brain's filter is checking for, how do you actually pass these tests deliberately, rather than hoping for the best? The first thing is spacing your review across separated days rather than clustering all your exposure into single intense sessions. Instead of learning 10 brand new words today and never returning to them, learn 5 words today and specifically schedule time tomorrow and again several days later to deliberately revisit those exact same 5 words. This spaced pattern signals importance to your filter far more effectively than any single concentrated study session ever could. The second thing is forcing genuine retrieval and use immediately after learning any new word, rather than simply reviewing its definition repeatedly. Construct an original sentence using the word, ideally connected to something real in your own life. Say it out loud. Use it in an actual message or conversation if possible. This active retrieval step is often the single most powerful action separating words that survive from words that quietly disappear within days. The third thing is deliberately connecting new vocabulary to genuine personal meaning whenever you can, rather than learning words as abstract, isolated facts. Instead of memorizing anxious through a dictionary definition alone, think specifically of a moment you actually felt anxious and attach the word directly to that real memory. I want to come back to Omar's story because what happened after he understood this filtering system changed his entire approach. He completely restructured his study method. Fewer new words per day, but each one reviewed again specifically several days later. Every new word immediately used in an original sentence about his own real life, rather than simply written down and reviewed passively. A few months later, when he tested himself again on words from this new, smaller, more deliberately spaced list, the results were completely different. Instead of remembering roughly 6% of what he'd studied, he remembered the vast majority of it. He told me, "Emma, I'm learning fewer words now, but I actually own them. They feel like mine." That distinction between technically studying a word and actually owning it permanently is exactly what his brain's filtering system had been quietly enforcing all along, whether he understood the rules or not. Your brain's filter isn't your enemy, even though it can feel that way when words disappear despite your genuine effort. It's simply doing its job, protecting your limited memory capacity from being overwhelmed by information that hasn't yet proven itself worth keeping permanently. Learn the rules this filter actually uses. Space your repetition across real time. Force genuine retrieval and use, not passive review. Connect new words to real personal meaning whenever you can.